Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 225. As always, I'm going to start us off with a bit of a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heed and folly bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, a loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly profit laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come down to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with give what wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard. Do please go and check out his YouTube channel if you're into good music. Good evening to my guests this evening, Hitman and Tharium. I can't remember if Tharium's been on the stream before.
I have not. No, this is my first time.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm always happy to have a first-time streamer. I do believe that Mitch and Aaron Hook are going to join us, although Aaron Hook said he might be a bit late because he's also on another stream because he's a busy man. As always, I'm going to start us off by asking the guests if they have a first subject for this evening. And because Fariam hasn't done this before, I'll start with Hitman. Hitman, did you have a first subject you wanted to talk about this evening?
Well, I guess because I think I know what Fariam probably might bring up. So let's talk about the Trump and Musk fallout in America.
Yeah, this seems to have got. I mean, just looking at it from X, from Twitter, this seems to have got quite nasty.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go on.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, essentially, obviously Elon Musk was put in charge of the Doge department in the government, and I think it was the other week, his term formally ended, and there was talk all about, well, the fact he's leaving shows that, the relationship between them isn't good, and some people were coping and saying, oh no, it's just because the term ended, and it's like, well, we'll see. And then, and then what? Yes, and then what ended up happening was Musk then, because that while this was all going on, Trump is trying to put this bill through Congress called the Big Beautiful Bill. It's going to massively help with like deportation of like illegal immigration, but the thing is, in order to do that, it requires funding, and obviously there's a big deficit going on. And Elon Musk, being a bit of a lolbert, is opposed to like big spending, and he's kind of came out on X against it, saying this is all like pork barrel and waste and whatnot. 'Cause that's the whole point of Doge, is to slash spending. And so that happened, and then he had a massive spurg out on, I think it was Thursday night, where essentially he and Trump were full at it, and basically Trump cut off all of the subsidies and tax credits that Elon's been getting for years towards his SpaceX and Tesla. And then Trump drops a bombshell. No, not Trump, sorry. Musk then drops a bombshell saying, no, Trump's reason he's not released the Epstein files is because he's in them. And things kind of went a bit mental from there.
Yeah, it seems to have. I wonder. I mean, I wonder how insulting you have to be to each other before it's you can't heal the breach. If you see what I mean.
Well, I mean, Musk called him a pedo, so I think it's well past the point of no return on that one.
Yeah, I suspected.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Sorry, you carry on, Farron.
Yeah, I suspected, like right from the beginning, once Trump got in, that there would be a fallout between him and Musk, because they're both men with big egos who are both used to running things their way, and that's always going to clash. I didn't expect it would be quite such a such a blow up like this, though.
Yeah, I mean, look, to my understanding is that Trump didn't have a lot to do with Epstein, but I have no idea what the truth is.
Yeah, it's odd because Trump seems to have been the only sort of rich person in that sort of circle who actually did distance himself from Jeffrey after Jeffrey tried hitting on one of his staff in Mar-a-Lago. He banned him from all his properties and stuff.
Yes. And, unlike Bill Clinton, for example, and many others, there are no, as far as I know anyway, there are not records of Trump continually flying over to Epstein Island in the Virgin Islands.
I think the only records was that he borrowed his plane to go from Florida to New York. And that just seems to be something these billionaires do. They borrow each other's jets from time to time, I guess.
Well, the thing is, with Elon, I think this is all just a big shit stir from him, because I bet if you look at the actual report, it'll probably say something like, the only mention of Trump is something like, known former associates of Jeffrey Epstein, Donald J. Trump. This associate, frequented certain, elite parties with Epstein, and they knew each other, but other than that, nothing to imply that he's done anything illegal or immoral. Yeah.
Curious, yes. I mean, as I say, my thing is, and I mean, we're going to talk obviously in a bit about reform and Zia Yousef and what have you. And if you followed reform, it's you must have noticed over the last couple of days, Nigel Farage coming out with things like, I'd sooner eat razor blades than have Rupert Lowe back in the party, which strikes me as extremely childish, but I like Rupert Lowe myself. But how much of these guys got to insult each other before they can't heal the rift?
Well, have you seen some people have been thinking it's all just an act, and that seems a bit of a reach for how they're going at it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure that I know that I've seen Trump tweeting about, we can stop his tax breaks, and Musk has been tweeting about Epstein, etc. So this seems they're from each other for an act.
Yeah.
And
go on.
Sorry, another point to remember is that it's Donald Trump who suspended Elon's, tax credits on his companies, and it wasn't Biden, it wasn't Obama, it's been Donald Trump. So that really must show you they must have fallen out of the fact he's done that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also Musk has got quite a few American defense contracts, and you would presume that the commander-in-chief of American Armed Forces has a fair amount of influence on who gets those.
Well, it's interesting because Elon said that he actually announced that one of the things he was doing, it was called like a dragon ship or something, was being cancelled, and then later on he walked it back and said, "Actually, no, it's not being cancelled," and said, "Yeah, he probably got a tap on the shoulder and told, you can't walk out of that one, Sonny."
I mean, that was a really bad look, because the Dragon rocket you're talking about, that was all because they've got a couple of astronauts that are stranded in one of the space stations, and so SpaceX took on the job of, okay, well, we're going to go get them, and so this was their Dragon rocket thing, the rocket in question was to rescue these two astronauts, and so you're saying we're going to stop that. That's really not a good look for anyone.
No.
My little spat with Trump is going to mean I'm going to just leave these astronauts.
And what's even worse is allegedly Trump revealed that Elon apparently it takes ketamine, and it's suspected that Elon was on ketamine as to why he's done this big spurg out.
I mean, he probably is, right?
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. I don't see it getting patched up between the two of them, though.
No, I don't. And I will say one thing that really irked me is the disgusting Ian Miles Chong was all there like, "Oh yeah, fuck Trump, I'm all with you, Elon," and it's just like, oh my, you disgusting creature.
Does anyone take Ian Miles Chong seriously anymore?
Elon seems to.
Not JD Vance. No, he was on Theo Vaughn's podcast. And Theo Vaughn, of course, he's got Ian Miles Chong on mute. And when JD Vance found out, he was just like laughing live on that particular chat. So I think it would be fair to say JD Vance is probably one with an add-on account in our circles or something. Like, he's definitely clued on to some of our meme craft, I suppose you could say.
Well, he's a millennial, so he's probably a bit more in touch with it.
Yeah, and Elon was talking. He did that post about making a new political party in America, because he's obviously not happy with any of them now. And the problem with Elon is he wants a party for autistic billionaire entrepreneurs. It's not a big voter base, really.
No, that's indeed true. I think you make a good point there, Tharian.
I mean, we remember his fallout earlier about the worker visas. He obviously wants all of them. He wants like as many sort of smart people as he can just to boost his companies. Whereas Trump is like, no, we're supposed to be America first, not import 1 billion Indians for SpaceX.
Very true. Very true. Can I just say to Aubreyality in the chat, Aubreyality, you have your wrong identity on again. Sorry, beg your pardon, Tharian.
No, that's it.
Did you, I nearly called you Rupert there. Mitch, did you have a first subject for this evening, which is not the Reform Yousef thing, which I'm sure is going to be Tharian's subject?
Nah, do you want to go into Fabian? Right, until we start.
We can probably talk about that for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we will talk about that for a while. But all right, the thing I thought we should at least talk about briefly is the report, which was it Matt Godwinson's report?
Matt Goodwin, yeah.
Matt Goodwin, I beg your pardon. And the native-born Anglo-Celtic Brits are going to be a minority by 2060, which, of course, that figure has been around for quite a long time. It just hasn't been mentioned much in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And Tice's disgusting reply, "Oh, well, I won't be around." I mean, Tice is probably younger than me. I'm not sure. I'm 59.
I actually think he's slightly older than you. Let me check.
I think he's about.
Yeah, he was born in
64, isn't he? Oh.
I thought he was about 56, but I have no idea. But he's about my age anyway. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, if I was around in 2060, I'd be 95, and I'd be very, very surprised if I make 95. To be honest, given the life
I think you're stubborn enough. I think you're stubborn enough, though.
Yeah, well, maybe, but I mean, I think I've done a bit too much smoking and getting shot at and drinking and all that kind of stuff to make very old bones. But anyway, but that's not the point. I mean, I've got a son.
Oh yeah.
I've got a son, and I'm concerned about the nation that he gets.
Well, and that's Richard Tice has children himself as well, and just this insane boomer mindset of, well, I'll be dead then. It's staggering how selfish you can think like that.
It's just crazy to me because I've never thought that way. There's a period when your generation is responsible for the country, I suppose you could say. But if you're a reasonable human being, you want to hand it on to your the next generation in a reasonable state, which of course it certainly isn't at the moment. I don't understand Tice's how Tice as a political guy could even come out with that bullshit is an amazement to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be just he is just generally bought into the shit livery of, so long as people are waving Union Jacks, none of it matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where your ancestors came from, which is utter bullshit. I'm sorry, it is.
It's just sad because, like any other group, they'd say, no, obviously this ethnic group of people deserve to exist. But it's just, the shit libs just don't extend it to themselves ever. Or to
the British. Real
which he's
British,
obviously part of. He's obviously one of us, but just I don't know, doesn't seem to care about us as an ethnic group.
I'll tell you one group he does care about. He cares about Ukraine. Remember that old what we did.
Oh God! It's amazing to me that all these British politicians who don't give two shits about native British people really hate them. In the case of people like the Prime Minister, you send you to jail for 3 years for a tweet. These are the same guys who are all saying, "Oh yeah, we should go to war with Russia over Ukraine." A war in which Britain would last about 5 minutes.
Yeah. And of course they recognize Ukrainians as a distinct people from the Russians, which is, I don't know about that.
It's not really true, but
and Matt, because he's after he sort of does that quip and about he'll be dead by then. He says sort of like his main concern is, well, like we've got to get people into work. What? That's not the issue. And then Stephen Edgerton pushes Richard on this again, and his response is just, "Oh, you're obsessed with this." Well, yeah.
He went on about the interviewer, Edgerton, I think it was,
Yeah.
he actually made the point that, in the past, Nigel Farage and Reform have promised that all illegal immigrants will be deported.
Hmm.
And of course, Tice was very much soft peddling that, saying, "Oh, it could take ages, and it's going to be really hard," which is just bullshit. I mean, if the guys are not willing to say up front, "Yes, we're going to do this,"
Exactly.
given how hard it actually will be to do in terms of practical politics, it will not happen.
Whenever I hear waffling, especially from politicians, I always assume they're lying. If you just can't answer a question like that simply, then it's a lie. And okay, so like, if I was to steel man Richard Tice with that, he's being asked, it's a very simple question. Go, yes, we are committed to deporting all illegal immigrants.
Absolutely.
We just don't know. We just don't. And for his like whatever he's waffling about, you can just say we don't know how many that is yet. It will be a struggle, but yes, we are committed to that. It's a simple question.
2.5 million. Between 2 and 2.5 million, I think, is a realistic figure of how many illegal immigrants there are.
I think it could be 5 even.
Oh, look, I'm not saying it's impossible, but the official figures are supposedly about 1 million, but it's easily 2.5 times that. And all of those people should be deported, along with all of the people from overseas who commit serious crimes. I'm not saying that you should deport someone because they get a traffic offence, but if you commit a serious crime and you have an overseas passport, you should be immediately deported on the end of your sentence. And that would be a very, very popular policy with most sane British people. And even Labour supporters. A majority of Labour supporters support deporting illegal immigrants, even Labour supporters. So who the hell are these mythical centrist voters that Reform are supposedly chasing?
I mean, I was doing a woodworking course yesterday where I was talking to a bunch of guys who voted Reform. They were like, Gen Xers and such, and they just have the opinion like you get some reformers who will say that the average Reform voter just wants the illegals and foreign criminals deported. He doesn't want legals deported. And so, well, the average point to at this point, he just wants a Boris wave reversed at the very least. Like he just wants that sizable reduction in the foreign population we go here. I mean, it's not illegal. He's not about because I don't think he knows. Because I don't think. Well, how would you know if someone's illegal or illegal? You just see the average point to event, and he just sees loads of brown people just milling about, and he just thinks deport. And it's like, and you got Rupert Lowe, who, if you ask, it's like Rupert Lowe, if you want to ask him that question, he'll just say in one sentence what takes twice, 3 or 4 to say, which kind of one thing. I think so. What it's kind of what I can't remember his name now.
Nietzsche.
No, I was trying to think of that Godfrey Bloom. That was it, Godfrey Bloom, who said that as he on Twitter, it's a shame that Reform lost this guy. And, because
you mean Ben Habib?
No, I'm talking about Godfrey Bloom, talking about Rupert Lowe.
Okay. I listen. I'll be honest, and this is probably the main thing we're going to talk about tonight. Is going to be Reform and Zia Yousef, etc. But I don't understand where Reform stand on some of these issues and what the hell the leadership of Reform think they're doing, because they're completely out of step with most ordinary British people. Most people want mass deportations, and mass deportations, particularly in the light of what we're talking about in the moment with native Anglo-Celtic British people being a minority within 3 decades or so, is something that must happen. If we don't do that, we are going to lose our own country. It's as simple as that.
I was on the traffic point. I know in like Thailand, for example, let's say you're a tourist in Thailand and you get into a road accident. Now, it might be, let's say, I know, a Thai driver didn't check his mirrors properly or whatever. But in Thailand, we're basically, if a foreigner gets involved in an accident, even if it's not technically his fault, they'll still say, well, that foreigner got into an accident. That accident wouldn't have happened if a foreigner was there, and so they'll just deport you as a tourist if you got involved in a traffic accident. So I say that's a valid reason to deport someone if they do a traffic offence over here.
Oh, listen, I'm not against making excuses, and let me be quite clear with the audience. I actually support deportations of people who are here legally. I'm not. I want those guys gone too, eventually. But you have to start somewhere.
Those two African lads who burnt that guy alive in his house. Did you see that?
Sadly, I did. Yes,
I did not hear of that.
So
they put fireworks through his letterbox or window or something.
Apparently, this guy, they'd been harassing him for ages now, so all his windows were smashed up. So he just had to keep them boarded up. And this one time, they throw a firework. I think it was like 75 or something, and they throw a firework in, and he ends up burning to death. I think they got,
as people pointed. Sorry, what did they get, Farron?
I think they got 3.5 years prison sentence
for murder.
Yeah,
for effect. I mean, that's murder as far as I'm concerned, especially with a 75-year-old dude who lived on his own.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's a totally inadequate sentence. I mean, that English woman who did the tweet got 3 years in prison for a tweet.
Yeah.
Because you can't even talk about the two-tier justice system in Britain anymore because it so obviously is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's not something you can argue about. There just is a two-tier justice system. If you're a white guy, you will get the authorities come down on you like a ton of bricks, or a white woman. They'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. Whereas if you're an immigrant or the descendant of immigrants, nothing will happen to you if you murder elderly people.
Do you remember, it was a few months ago now, the Sentencing Council, I think, was saying how we need to solve it to make it official that ethnic minorities get reduced sentences because of whatever nonsense reasons they had. Do you remember that? It ended up, Labour ended up dropping it, but I mean, so what? Like, it's already been policy in the courts for a while now.
And we're overrun with lefty liberal judges in any case. But,
yeah,
I mean,
that one, the chief lawyer, was saying how, all of us are just Nazis, basically.
Oh, look, that was one of the things I saw. If you're patriotic, you are now an extreme right-wing terrorist. If you're patriotic. Which I've got to tell you guys, that would have made every single soldier I knew in the British Army in the mid-1980s, we would have all been terrorists. Because we were all patriotic.
Yeah. What the term they used? They said cultural nationalism, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they call it cultural nationalism.
Yeah, but if you start saving that talking points, even.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, like
when we went to the beach, on leave, we'd all have GPMG Peace Through Superior Firepower T-shirts and Union Jack swimmers.
Mm-hmm.
That's because that's the sort of guys we all were, and it's what you were encouraged to be in those days. And, British soldiers, what you'd kind of expect to be, don't you think?
That's the thing, like, with that new definition, like that new terrorism definition from Prevent, you could even interpret that as expecting the foreigners to integrate is now terrorism.
Yep.
Like, what have we got to? Well, okay, we can't even integrate them now. That's terrorism.
Man, I find it very difficult because we're on YouTube and you have to be careful what you say. But our leaders are such obvious traitors. Our political leaders, they're such obvious traitors. And you've got idiot wankers like Keir Starmer, two-tier Keir, as he's correctly known, who want to start a war with Russia. Who the hell does he think's going to fight for it?
Yeah. I mean, do you remember when, because Ukraine had a lot of, well, not a lot, but they had a fair bunch of new ethnic people in their country. And as soon as the war broke out, they were out there quick. They weren't about to stick around and fight. Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that it did occur to me. If Britain did go to war with Russia, I mean, yes, our military infrastructure would be wiped out very quickly because we've got no defenses against missiles and stuff in Britain at all, basically. And I literally mean nothing beyond about 6 Royal Navy anti-air destroyers. That's about all we have. There's almost no air defenses for the British Army. They're terrible, and there's not enough of the little tiny things we do have. You know, so we would, our military infrastructure would be wiped out within a day if that's what the Russians wanted to do. But the only good thing about it is you'd get tens of thousands of these immigrants trying to leave. That's about the only good thing about it.
Do you know what sort of situation our stockpile of arms are? Because I remember hearing
they're terrible.
We'd basically already given away everything to Ukraine.
Yes. Yes.
So I haven't seen like any sort of real ramp up of military production.
No, there isn't, and we would find it very difficult to do.
You know.
We buy quite a lot of stuff off the Americans, and the Americans are also having problems for the same reasons. But I'll give you a good example, Fariam, of British military stocks. When the 1982 Falklands War broke out, Britain had to put their entire war stocks of advanced AIM-9L Sidewinders on the 2 British aircraft carriers. That was the entire war stocks of what we had, right? If war had broken out in the Soviet Union at that time, so you can imagine they would have lasted like, I don't know, a day and a half maybe. But the only reason we were able to do that was because Reagan agreed to replace them with American stocks, which of course we paid for, but it just meant we could replace them straight away. But the British military war stocks of ammunition and what have you have always been appallingly low. And as you correctly said, they are now lower than they ever have been in the past because we've given away so much stuff to Ukraine, most of which, by the way, the Russians have already knocked out. But anyway, you know.
I'm sure also some of it, a good chunk, unfortunately, was also given to the Ukrainians and then sold to the Russians to be used on Ukrainians. just so brilliant.
The whole thing is shit. And of course, you get stuff like the Russians are partially blaming the Brits for the attack on the Russian military airfields that the Ukrainians carried out recently. And you know what? In terms of planning and intelligence, probably true, because that is the sort of thing the Brits do with the SAS and the SBS and what have you. So Putin's probably not even wrong about that.
Yeah, well, the Russians view it as the Anglo-Saxon world, right? That's their
with the Americans, I know. Yeah.
And they view us, the Anglo-Saxon, as their great Satan, with sort of the evil behind everything that befalls them. Also, some of them also seem to think that we are the ones controlling America, which would be lovely if it was true, but just not.
Yeah, it never has been true. I'd never understand those Americans who believe this, to be honest with you. I mean, I know they mean the city of London and what have you, but even so, it's not true.
Well, ultimately, this is something Semigog talked about. You have this international banking financial cartel who were based in Britain, and then they kind of transplanted themselves into America. So to think of them as either British or American is laughable. They're disgusting financiers, and they just manipulate countries and people for their own ends. So
yeah, I can say to Seb Angler, there's way less than 1,000 of those guys, mate. Way less.
There's only about, as far as the army, I think there's only about 200 Muslims or something in it, in the whole army.
No. You'd be talking about the British Armed Forces, not just the army. You'd be talking about the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force as well.
Yeah.
But I doubt if it's even that many. Far, far more British Muslims, and I say British in air quotes, of course.
Yeah.
Far, far more British Muslims have joined the Islamic State than have joined the British Armed Forces. Yeah. Far more.
We had Geralt of Rivia saying, because they have said we're going to be buying some new submarines, which is good. Any more investment in the military is good.
Well, hang on. Wait about this, though, mate. The thing about, and yes, Britain needs 12 SSNs and not 6 or 7, which is what we have 6 at the moment, and we eventually will have 7. But where are they building these things? Because the thing is, they've got to build the 4 new boomers, the 4 new nuclear boats with nuclear missiles in. So how are they building another 5 SSNs? I mean, like I say, totally agree with doing that, but you're going to have to expand the building facilities and the workforce if you're going to do that.
And we have no money.
I haven't seen how they're going to do it yet, to be honest.
I did see one article saying taxation might need to be raised to put us on more of a war footing. We are already at wartime taxation levels, though.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah. Level 98 bear hunting armor is saying single-digit MTBs, probably main battle tanks. Britain has about 230 main battle tanks, and when I was in the army in the mid-1980s, we had 1,100.
Yeah.
So it's a quarter of what it was, less than a quarter actually.
I was going to say, like Geralt was saying, that these new subs, they'll be crewed by non-whites. They won't be. Because there aren't any to prove them.
No, because A, they don't join the armed forces, and B, you need a lot of technical specialists to run nuclear-powered submarines. I mean, apart from spaceships, nuclear-powered submarines are probably the most complicated thing made in the modern world. The only thing that would be more complicated would be a spaceship, basically.
One thing I will add to this is, though not many Muslims join the armed forces, I happen to know that a lot of Africans do. So I can just imagine them just putting like loads of Africans on them or something. That'd be great, won't it?
In which case there'll be accidents because they won't be qualified. But not that many Africans actually join the armed forces. But when they do, they mostly join as bog standard privates in the army. But,
I mean, the Gurkhas make up a big chunk of the non-native population in the army.
Well, they don't count because they're not British, and the vast majority of them go home at the end of their
but I think if you look at like the demographics of
I'm sure they use them.
I mean,
they'll use the Gurkhas to try and pretend the British Army is diverse, but of course the Gurkhas are traditional soldiers who've joined and fought for the British going back to the 1820s. So, I mean,
they're good.
Totally different story, really. I'm pleased to say we have Ataman.
Hello.
Good evening, Ataman. Nice to see you, mate.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good to be here.
We're just having a little digression about the British Armed Forces, and we have been talking about the report last week that all of us guys have known for a long time. The native Brits are going to be a minority by about 2060. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about as regards to that?
I haven't looked into it, but doesn't that seem a bit late? Like I would have figured, because we had 66, but that was based on predictions from like the early 2000s. I would have considered the way it sped up. I would have considered it would have been more like the late 50s or mid 50s even.
I'm not sure. I believe this was the report from Godwin, the bloke who's the guy who's a big reform supporter. I think he did this report initially.
Well, of course, I mean, I was reminded of this today actually, but you know, everyone's doing the rounds and saying, "Oh, who cares?" You had Richard Tice, which really had maybe kind of thrown the towel on that whole thing, where he's going, "Oh, you know, I'll be dead by then. What does it matter? Why are you obsessed with this?" or whatever it was he said. And it's like, funny enough, hope not hate. Actually, I've brought this up. I posted it to Horace, I think, on Twitter a while back. But hope not hate actually did actually asked the public about this on the old 2066 figure. It was, I think it was like back in 2018 they asked this, and they asked like they polled a set amount of the public and said, how would you feel about this? And it was like an overwhelming majority said that it made them feel uneasy and unhappy, which were the two harshest negatives you could answer on the survey.
Yeah, you couldn't have something stronger than that, which is what I strongly suspect most people felt. But
yeah,
and that was 2018.
I believe so. Yeah, 2018 or 2019.
And then that's the thing. Like our position only grows stronger every day. More people come to our side. It's not going the other way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Morgoth did a tweet about this on X, on Twitter. I think it was today, either today or excuse me, or late yesterday. And he said the point is, this is now so stark and it's making it into the mainstream media, and they just can't avoid talking about it anymore.
Oh,
it's like a freight train which is going to hit the center of British politics from now on.
Did you see it sodding Eid again?
Yeah.
Isn't it always some sort of Muslim festival?
Yeah, so we're going to have a whole new load of videos showing total integration again, no doubt.
Yeah, right.
And
nothing about Islamic rape gangs.
No.
Well, don't forget, it's also you know, that month as well.
Oh, yeah, it's a bit more muted than it's been in the past, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was that David Betts fellow on Twitter who said basically the way that the Overton window's shifting our way, where everyone's talking about demographics and whatnot, it's going to be a point where even though the whole like Zia Yousef situation, the way it's unfolded thus far, is just going to be a position where Farage won't be able to control the direction reform goes. So that's a bit of a white pill to be had. Is like, like that the way things are going, it's going to be like, okay, reform kind of has to go our way in the medium future.
Matt Goodwin's an odd one because I always say like he's been quite a prominent reform sort of spokesperson, supporter for a long time, but he seems a lot more up on like the ethnic replacement stuff and always has done than what reform's leadership seem to want to talk about.
Yeah, I agree with that theory. Yes, he does seem to be a bit more in touch.
He had a debate, I believe, a year, maybe 18 months ago with Mehdi Hassan, and he kind of lost the debate, but the weakness in his debating tactics that everyone was pointing out to him came from the fact that he was still trying to like toe this sort of like civic nationalist line. I don't like to ever bring up that term, but he was trying to sort of toe that line whilst also bringing in stats about like demographics and ethnicity, and the two aren't really, you know that you end up with a disconnect between those two. And I think he's been like slowly closing that, but I'm still wary of him because, you know, he did write an entire report about how you should essentially own the right wing position and then sort of roll it back into the center right. So
yeah, I think like one thing he said was that he said something along the like he said stuff along the lines of our society needs guardrails or something. Like he's not saying full on like decline of Christianity, and he's talking about what's her name, Liz, I don't know, OnlyFans whore and daughter who I can't remember the name, something Phillips. But yeah, he was talking about that, and he basically said like, he saw how lack of guardrails regarding morality under under liberalism, and I'm thinking to himself, he's definitely. I don't know who he's been reading, but certainly he's been reading up on some right-wing stuff, shall we say? Like he's, he wasn't saying this kind of stuff 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't ever sort of like damn people forever. And people can genuinely change.
For sure.
And
for sure.
But yeah, and it is like this the ethnic replacement stuff. Like that's not a good thing to bring up if you're if you're not concerned about that, like our leaders are. Like Richard Tice clearly isn't, You don't want
But Tharian, what worries me is, you see, I entirely take what Adam was saying about the Matt Goodwin's drawback.
Oh yeah.
But he's actually more truthful and more downright about this stuff than Nigel Farage is.
Exactly, yeah.
Which
is why it's interesting.
Worries me. That's what worries me about it.
I think it's because Matt Goodwin is trying to essentially remember, because he was a former associate of Hope Not Hate, and I think what he's trying to do is essentially prime the population. Oh, don't resist. It's inevitable. You just have to accept it.
Perhaps.
There is that. Like I've I mean, you and me, Angie, we got a couple of friends. They do seem to have fallen into that sort of like Tony Blair type attitude of, well, we're just going to have to live with it.
Listen, I don't really associate with these people anymore, as you know, Thurian. But I would differentiate one of them from the other. There are two in particular.
Yeah, but I mean, I know what you mean.
One of them's a bit more realistic than the other one.
I know what you mean, but I'm just talking about purely on the having to live with it side of things.
Well, you can't live with it. I'm sorry, you can't.
No, I know.
Eric Kaufman kind of pushes this angle as well. Eric Kaufman kind of used to, in his book, although he's been a bit better in certain interviews recently, he used to kind of go down the line that actually the regime isn't wrong in what it's doing, it's just doing it too fast, and people are noticing, and it's causing excess friction, essentially.
Well, of course, Dan Kaufman, giving his ethnic background, would say that now, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, I dare say one could do an early life check in that one. Before we move on a bit, I just want to say hello to Aaron Hook. How are you going, Aaron?
Oh, well.
Did you have a first subject you wanted to talk about this evening, Aaron?
Not really, no.
Okay, in which case I shall ask Atman, did you have something in particular you wanted to bring up which was not related to Reform Zia Yousef and Nigel Farage?
Well, I can't really talk about the Reform Zia Yousef thing anyway, because I actually just have no idea what's going on there. I was going to bring up this study and this Hope Not Hate thing, which is why I had it at the ready, but we've kind of already covered that.
Well, have you got anything else to say on it? Now's the time to do it, because I think our second hour is mostly going to be Zia Yousef, Reform, Farage, etc. So
now let's jump into the Zia Yousef thing then, because I generally have no idea what this is. So I'm interested to.
All right. Well, before I do that, what I'd like to do is to thank. I would like to thank Gerin for sending us $5 US, and he said hello on Entropy. Guys, if you want to support the channel, you can do so via Entropy. The link is pinned at the top of the chat. And you can also ask us super chat questions there, which we will absolutely definitely answer towards the end of the stream. And it is much appreciated, because these days I'm spending quite a lot of money to keep this channel going on StreamYards and also on X, because you can't stream on these platforms as often as we do for nothing these days. Anyway, thank you for that, Geraint. Much appreciated, and you quite often send us some money. I just to set the scene for this. Obviously, Zia Yousef, who is a Muslim from Sri Lanka, was made the chairman of the Reform Party, which I always thought was an extremely strange thing to do. And he didn't even give them that bigger donation.
It was £200,000, which in politics is nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot of money to all of us guys, of course, as individuals. But in terms of politics, as Tharium says, it's not that much, to be honest. He got there was a lot of bad reports about Zia Yousef from people at Reform HQ. A lot of people didn't like him. Apparently, a lot of women in particular didn't like him. And I'm no sort of feminist, as anyone who's known me can tell you. But that's the fact of it. There's also
one thing. Have you ever tried, like, just searching for information about him? Because before he joined Reform,
you don't get a lot.
Nothing. There's nothing. It's like I think he probably paid someone to help scrub as much of his stuff off the internet as possible.
Yeah, and he was Goldman Sachs. Wasn't he Goldman Sachs originally?
Yeah,
which
Goldman
is not
Sachs.
That's not a recommendation if you're a traditional nationalist sort of person like myself. He was Goldman Sachs originally, like financial services and all this bullshit. He had a pretty bad reputation with the people he was working with. He was supposedly rude, etc. Women didn't like him very much. Of course, he ran to the cops over Rupert Lowe, a bloke 20 years his senior, supposedly threatening him. You know, and Rupert Lowe is 20 years older than Yousef.
Oh, how I wish that had been true when I heard that. I was like, oh, please.
Yeah, exactly. And today, by the way, Farage was on an interview where he said, oh, maybe he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Which, you know, frankly, he should have come up.
He said that was a mistake
months ago. Yeah, he should have said that months ago.
Yeah, for Nigel to say that, given how much Nigel hates Rupert, like, I mean, that says all you need to know, really. That it was just made
so
up,
then,
as far as I'm
as I said, I'm setting the scene up here, Tharium, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to speak first, because I know you wanted to come on this stream to speak about this. But I'm just setting it up for the audience. So anyway, the newest Reform MP did her maiden speech and a maiden question in Parliament, and said we should ban the burqa. Now, of course, we should ban the burqa. This is true as far as I'm concerned. But I suspect the reason she would like to ban it is because of feminism and all the rest of it. Whereas I'd like to ban it just because it would make life more difficult in Britain for Muslims. And I don't want more Muslims in Britain. So I would ban it, but for a totally different reason. I mean, you know, I fully support banning halal slaughter, but I would also ban kosher slaughter at the same time, because you have to be fair. And I would do those mainly on the basis that they're against British animal welfare laws, and they should be. But the fact that it would also cause quite a lot of Muslims to want to leave Britain, that's a good side effect as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, that's me. So anyway, Zia Yousef then called this woman, she called her dumb, I think. And then he got a load of backlash from this and then resigned. And Nigel Farage goes on assorted TV shows and blames the alt-right, particularly on X, on Twitter. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the alt-right hasn't been a thing for the past half dozen years, really. You know, certainly the last 5 years, the alt-right was a thing from, I don't know, pre-2016, shall we say? But Nigel Farage blamed the alt-right, and he also blamed Indian bots for some unknown reason. I mean, what Indian bots have against a Sri Lankan guy, I'm not quite sure, given that the Indians are allies of the Sri Lankans for the most part.
The Russian bots, you could get that, right? Russia wants to influence American presidential election. Okay, fine. But yeah, Indian bots. Why does India care about the chairman of some party in the UK with 5 MPs?
Yeah, I mean, look,
So
as
laughable.
far as I'm concerned, the alt-right and the Indian bots are about the same level of ridiculous nonsense. I mean, all I can suspect is that Farage thought he was talking to a load of 85-year-old boomers who wouldn't possibly understand what he was talking about. That's the best excuse I can make for him.
That does remind me a bit off topic, but there was a new AI startup company that was saying, we've got AI that writes code. It was actually just 700 Indians. So
Like
they've
yeah. Anyway, look, that's the setup for this. Although I will just add one thing. I was watching a Carl Benjamin video just before we went live, and I didn't get to the end of it, but he apparently, having done this really curt resignation tweet, Yousef is now back, but not as chairman, which is deeply suspicious to me, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, I've said enough. I'm going to let Fariam start this because he hasn't been on this stream before, and he especially asked to come on this one to talk about this subject. But everyone will get plenty of a chance to reply. We're certainly going to go at least for another hour. So Fariam, you go, mate.
So yeah, when the news drops, it was in the middle of Jack, our mutual friend. He was talking about how it's not possible, it's not feasible to ban the burqa at the moment because our police just wouldn't do it. They don't have the capacity to, because they're not. If you did ban it, because they're just so weak and pathetic. And then someone else was saying, no. When reform get in, they're going to totally overhaul the police, and then they can ban the burqa. And I'm saying, reform aren't banning the burqa. Not with Zia Yousef, and pointing out his comments calling Sarah Poachin dumb, and the reform saying it's not reform policy, and then the news drops, Zia has quit, and I was trying not to be too much of a smug prick, because that was just perfect timing for that, and it does seem that I don't know, so we don't really know what pushed him over the edge. But I do think there's forces in reform who are working against him. And he didn't like that. I mean, they have blamed it all on just Twitter users, which if true is very pathetic. That that all of us just telling him to piss off on Twitter would make him leave. So I'm not sure I buy that. And so you had the response from all the MPs. It's the usual, it was sad to see him go. He was a great guy and stuff. Sounds, to me, it all just seemed like we've got to portray party unity, especially after Rupert Lowe. Everything's fine at reform, don't worry, we'll get along. But you had Aaron Banks coming out and just saying there'll be champagne popping at Reform HQ now, with Zia gone. And I always try to focus on the little statements, like the odd comments that sort of slip into stuff. Like people are saying, he's a great guy. Relationships can be intense. What do you mean by that? When that sort of slips into your waffle about him being great. So I suspect there was a lot of fighting. But yeah, he's back now, which is very disappointing. I think Nigel was the only person who liked him. But yeah. So anyone else want to speak for a bit?
Well, it should be noted that he's not back as the chairman; he's back as the leader of the Reform's Doge department. So
yeah,
it's so funny. He's essentially, I said this before, but he's basically become like the British version of what's his name? Bloody Vivek in America, Vivek Ramaswamy, because he was originally was going to be working with Elon on Doge before he got sent off, and now he's running for bloody governor And actually, thinking back quickly to the topic I talked about before, there's been talk that now Elon and Trump have fallen out, that there's calls for Trump to endorse the other Republican candidate for governor of Ohio and not Vivek, because Vivek's aligned with Elon, so hopefully that will happen. But back to Zia. Yeah, I've got a feeling that he wants to influence it, but he knows that being the chairman was far too contentious, so he's got to accept this new role as the leader of Doge now. So he's kind of been put in his place a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that because I think that the forces in reform who are against him, they've seen he can bleed now, and they're still there. So I think there's a good chance he'll either go again, or he'll just continue to be sidelined, or we will see another round of purges of the anti-Zia lot, which is possible.
It's true. And one other thing I will say is when Sarah Pochen, this new reform MP, came and said this in Parliament, I actually thought, oh, great, here's the next reform MP they're going to kick out for not keeping to the party line. They're going to, and especially when Zia came out and it's called her dumb, I'm like, right, well, she's on the chopping block now. And I was pleasantly surprised when the opposite happened. So I'm obviously... It's funny, for a moment there, I thought I nearly got back on the reform train, and then Farage did all the comments about, the online right are to blame, and then Tice's comments about not caring about us being a minority, and I thought, well, reform, you're doing a good job there very briefly, for about 5 seconds, but you lost me again.
Could I ask you guys, and I'd ask Tharium this in particular, I was watching an interview with Tice's bit of stuff, the blonde girl.
Yeah.
And she had been a big Elizabeth Oakeshott, yeah. She'd been a big supporter of Zia Yousef and had been bigging him up for the past 6 months. But she was very quick to say, oh, no, it doesn't really matter. He was only the chairman. He wasn't really a politician, blah, blah, blah. Oh, how is she going to change her tune now that he's back as the Doge dude? And how does Zia Yousef square this with saying me supporting a reform government is no longer a good use of my time? Surely there's something going on here which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was one thing that's so there's a few guys I follow on Twitter who they're with mid rank former supporters, they've got blogs and they've got somewhat of a profile. And I've had to delete some of the anti-Zia posts over the past couple of days. The main lot of anti-Zia posts immediate aftermath, and then I had to delete them today after the news came out of Zia coming back. So I'm just looking at going, I won't be surprised yet if it's just a matter of a lot of it, it's just going to filter down from top ranks. I mean, I also know people who apparently they met Zia Yousef at events. I may just say, but they found him irritable. I may just attribute this down to, oh well, Pat he's a newbie and all this. They kind of chalked it down because you got to factor a lot of people who are informed near me. They've never been a member of a political party before, and a lot of it is new to themselves. They just kind of I'm not sugarcoat what Zia Yousef said. However, there are younger chaps, and I say younger as in you're talking I don't know, say late stage millennials and Zoomers like myself who are just we're a bit more have a bit muted about just celebrating this because we just find it awkward, there are plenty of people in reform on that lower ranks who are just very cognizant of reform is meant to be the rights from whites party, and it's just look awkward detailing to people at the average point on the street. Oh yeah, we're going to do this, that, and the other about immigration, but we've got a Muslim for chairman.
This is this is a really odd part about Nigel, because Nigel, he wants us, us filthy sort of nationalists to vote for him, but also he's always sort of hated the anti-Islam sort of movement that nationalism attracts, and they just, I don't think it's possible to have a nationalist party anywhere in the West that doesn't become anti-Islam, because we're just not compatible. But Nigel seems to want to try and force
hang on though, Hariam. I would just say this: I have my issues with the counter-jihad movement for sure, because if you look at the likes of, let's say, Tommy Robinson,
Sure, yeah,
and Rebel Media and what have you, and also Douglas Murray, I think he's very definitely in that category. Excuse me. If you look at the likes of those guys, there is very definitely an agenda.
Yeah, the paid up lot. Yeah.
You know, they support a certain small Middle Eastern country, and like I said, I am no fan of Islam. I would absolutely ban the burqa. I would absolutely ban halal slaughter. But I also don't want hordes of Christian Africans coming into Britain either. That would equally destroy the country, you know, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I do have an issue with some of these counter-jihad people. So if Farage doesn't like those guys for that reason, then I'd be on his side. But I'm not sure it is that.
It's not that. Like, Farage is a big fan of Israel too, so
yes.
it's not, that's not his problem with them.
The thing is as well that I always found weird about that position is that like obviously he sort of steps over the whole Tommy Robinson thing, but he's still kind of adjacent to that same argument, which is this civic nationalist argument that it's, what's that poxy phrase? I need to stop using that. Which is this idea that like it's a cultural issue or an integration issue. So it does then seem weird to like have like Muslims in prominent positions within the party.
Yeah, like are you saying about African Christians, but you know, like at least when you've sort of like some African who has actually made the effort to adopt our culture, that's a lot better than a Muslim who just, you know, just doesn't care and will continue with their foreign stuff regardless.
At least in terms of party aesthetics, like for the base that they're trying to speak towards, it just seems very bizarre.
Yeah, because you know, they, like I said, they want us filthy nationalists, but they Nigel has you're saying you were watching that Sargon video earlier. Sargon said he had which is a good phrase, how the reform leadership have this real distrust of all their voters. They seem to, they sort of just want to hold us back and keep us at a distance because they view us like dirty, not really what they want, but they sort of trying to get our votes anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. Aaron, what's your thinking on this, mate? You haven't said much yet.
Well, I think the reason why Zia Yousef has gone from being chairman is in part because of social media, but not what social media said about him or what it's been saying about Farage. Because if you think back to that interview that Gawain Taylor did with The Spectator months ago, he mentioned the fact that Farage likes to be liked by people. And I really do think that social media criticism he has been getting since the way they completely mishandled the business with Rupert Lowe, that has actually gotten to Farage, and that that Zia Yousef going as chairman is a product of that. And I think him becoming the head of Doge law reform is a way of easing him out of the party without him causing a fuss. I wouldn't be surprised if at the beginning of next year he leaves that position as well and leaves reform completely in terms of his position of power, any position of power. So I think that Farage is sort of trying to mend fences with people that disagreed with him over the handling of Lowe, and this is him starting that. Whether he'll succeed or not is another question.
I think there's also a financial angle because, as we've talked about, you know, the £200,000 he gave to reform, it wasn't very much. And we've got to remember, we mentioned Aaron Banks earlier, but Aaron Banks is a full reform guy, and he's a former big Tory donor, so he's probably playing far more money into reform than Zia Yousef ever could. So Farage probably thinking in terms of financially, you know, I need to cut Zia off.
Yeah, the amount of money, as Therium said, that Zia Yousef put into reform, whilst it's a lot of money to all of us guys as individuals, wouldn't be in political terms. It was peanuts, to be honest with you. And there are probably other British businessmen who would be willing to back reform with more money than that. I mean, I think Aaron sorry, mate, I'll hand it over to you in a sec. I think Aaron made a very good point. One of the things that I noted when Farage was being interviewed about this was that Farage used that as the first time he has ever said that, maybe Yousef shouldn't have run to the cops over Rupert Lowe.
He did say it a couple of months ago, I think, in another interview, but it was in a lot of waffle, and not many people picked up on it.
Whereas this time, on the other hand, I can't see why Farage couldn't have just said to Zia Yousef, "No, you can't do that." But I mean, there we go.
Might have been he just did it on his own, you know.
Oh, maybe he did it. Yeah, I mean, all right, but I mean, even that to me, it just shows why someone who's an immigrant, like, or the son of an immigrant like Zia Yousef, is not suitable, because who goes to the police about someone supposedly threatening them who is 20 years older than they are? When you're in your 30s and the bloke you're talking to is nearly 70.
And even if he wasn't, like you're saying, and it was genuine, sort of like, I will kill you, like, an Englishman is not going to go to the police over that. That's ridiculous. That's just absurd to think that I'd ever do that. Like, I've had plenty of friends where we've got into arguments and we say we're going to kill each other. Obviously, it's not genuine. Rupert, obviously, even if he did, it wasn't genuine. You don't go to the police for that. Pathetic.
And even the police dropped it, which just shows you how pathetic it was. But I mean, you know, but yeah, I don't know. What worries me, to be honest, is that I would really like reform to win the next general election. I really would. But if they don't do anything, there's no point.
Yeah.
You know, if they're the so-called Conservative Party, in air quotes, Mark II, what is the purpose of it? None. They have to go to, as a bare minimum, they have to do net zero immigration, which is not good enough, but you know, it's a lot better than we have now.
Nigel,
and they also have to deport illegal immigrants and foreign criminals.
Nigel did say on the net zero, because that's their current stance. He did say, but if too many people leave, then we'll have to rethink that for net zero immigration. Oh, so if too many people leave, we'll just let them all back in again. Great.
Oh, because British population needs to go down. It doesn't need to stay at levels.
To be fair, the context was him talking about millionaires leaving, like a lot of British, professionals from London, white British emigrated to someone like Dubai because how the tax we are.
Yeah, so you know, it's like, okay, so we've lost 1,000 millionaires. Okay, we're going to need 100,000 Indians to make up for it.
as if that would be a like-for-like replacement, which it would not.
Because Nigel is very much a sort of a GDP kind of guy. You know, we've got to keep that GDP growing.
GDP is a shit measure of a country's wealth. It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, Nigel Farage said for years he said like GDP is a worthless way of measuring the economy. He's always emphasized that GDP per capita. So remember, like, he had an argument with Tom Harwood about it a while back.
But the GDP per capita is still crap, you know.
Adamant, what's your views on this? Because I know you're a bit like me. You don't totally support reform, but you don't totally hate them. Where do you think your vote might go at the next election? As of now,
I mean, it's still going to have to be reform, isn't it? I mean, there's just nothing else out there.
yeah, that's my view. That's my view. But I'd just be interested to hear your views because you haven't been on here for a while, and I think this is a pretty important subject in terms of British politics, at least.
Well, I was wondering to the extent that I don't know if you remember. Obviously, Sam Mellier went to prison for a while for stickers. We've covered that before, but prior to that, he did another little stunt where I think Hope Not Hate were trying to get the police to go after him, but they didn't. And what he did was he made pamphlets that were meant to look like Tory party pamphlets, but they basically lauded the Tories' like efforts to bring in huge amounts of immigration.
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder if like that's kind of not really an effective strategy against the Tories. But I do wonder if that would be quite an effective strategy against reform because, I mean, as I think we've already covered, reform being Farage being a populist, he wants to be popular. He kind of yearns for it. You can probably kind of shame them rightward, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they just seem to be lining up like they're going to basically do like the Trump 1.0 thing again, where they're going to go in, they're going to try and legislate certain things. Legislation alone isn't going to work because it's down to the interpretation by the institutions at large. And yeah, I don't know what you do with this, to be honest, except I suppose ride it out and wait for the next notch down the line towards something a bit more based.
I think getting rid of the so-called Conservative Party is essential. You've got to do that, and yeah, all right, reform might succeed in doing that, I suppose. Although the more towards the centre they go, the less they will succeed in that. I don't know. I mean, as Atman said, my entire opinion is I'll probably end up voting for reform at the next election because who the hell else can you vote for? There isn't anybody else, is there, really?
No.
I mean, someone in the chat said to me, I shouldn't listen to Carl Benjamin. Well, Carl Benjamin's a hell of a lot more base than Nigel Farage for the most part. And I think Carl Benjamin's a liberal, basically, still. But I listen to like everybody in between people like Carl Benjamin and Morgoth, and my own views are probably closer to Morgoth's than they are Carl Benjamin's, but whatever. Although Morgoth's more left wing than I am, to be honest, in the traditional sense.
Yeah, I would say that with Zia Yousef, because one female circulating that I don't know too much about this, but I heard it like circulated, including from one guy knowing before. Apparently, Nick Candy, I think he's the party treasurer, and like the last thing we heard about him was him going because he was like meeting Elon Musk alongside Nigel Farage back when just after the inauguration. Apparently, Nick Candy and Zia Yousef don't like each other, so I wonder hypothetically you could see lots of like Nick Candy taking over a chairmanship. I mean, I remember that some people
would that be a good thing, Mitch? Mitch, you know more about reform's internal stuff than I do. Would that be a good thing?
I don't really know so much. I mean, Nick Candy, he used to be a property developer, so that's why a lot of people are skeptical about him. However, unlike Zia Yousef, he actually is an Englishman. Like he is.
Well, that's always an advantage as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't even care if the next reform chairman's a Scottish guy or a Welsh guy or a Northern Irish guy. I'd just like them to be British, rather than trying.
Yeah. However, I was a Nick Candy. His missus is a Holly Valance actress. Like, is it?
Yeah, heard of her.
Yeah, I mean, she. I mean, yeah, they're not exactly like my wavelength, but I mean, I don't know, they're good enough. Like, they won't. Like they don't strike me as people who are but basically strike me as I don't know. I won't say as cowardly as Richard Tice, but I would certainly say like they're not as far along as us. Like Nick Hansfeld is probably a bit more of a just, I don't know, something like similar to Aaron Banks and Nigel Farage territory. So I don't see him pushing the envelope our way. But I'd rather have him than Zia Yousef going off all over Zia Yousef apparently being hard to work with and so on.
Yeah, loads of people didn't like him at all. We seem to have lost Hitman, but I very much hope he'll rejoin us shortly. Okay, so I'm going to just hand it over to Aaron Hook and Tharium. And
one thing I wanted to ask. So obviously Nigel's now saying, yeah, we'll deport all illegal immigrants. But, you know, that's going to require a lot of force. It's going to be kicking down doors, dragging people out, putting them in camps. Do you think Nigel has that in him to do that? Because I was saying he wants to be liked. And
I sure do. I cheer.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think Nigel has
Farage?
the stomach.
I don't know, mate. No,
Yeah.
I have my doubts. I mean, look, you've got to leave the ECHR.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to probably leave the human rights thing and a couple of other things as well. You have to do those things.
Do you?
But, yeah, I think you do, actually.
Well, I mean, we took away Shamima Begum's citizenship while staying within the ECHR.
Yeah, but she was also involved with the Islamic State.
Right, but I mean, the ECHR also enshrines freedom of expression, but look how that's gone. Like,
yeah, I know. Well, yeah.
I mean, I think it's just a question of like legal interpretation. You could largely reinterpret it for our own courts without having to go through the massive rigmarole of trying to.
But even then,
untangle ourselves from it.
But even then, Adam, and you would absolutely have to abolish the so-called Supreme Court.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, you'd have to get rid of that because otherwise that will just get appealed there, and the lefty judges there will just say, no, you can't do that.
I mean, the good thing is,
obviously the government controls the legal system, but it means you have to have a government which is willing to control the legal system and to sack judges.
And the good thing is that for us, unlike America, if we get a parliament with a majority who will fall in line, they can do anything. Like Supreme Court gone. It's very easy for them if they've got the will. Like Boris could have done. You would have to, Tharium, get rid of the so-called Supreme Court in Britain, which of course is a Blair invention. Yeah.
You would have to get rid of that.
Exactly.
But then of course the Conservative government that came in after Blair should have got rid of that themselves. And
they could have done. But they just
didn't.
lacked the will. There was no will there. Well, they were happy with it, really, as we all know.
But yeah, I agree with that. Aaron, what's your thinking on this stuff, mate?
Well, actually, with the leaving the European Court of Human Rights, that's quite easy. Well, you wouldn't actually have to leave it. You wouldn't actually have to leave it. All you'd have to do is repeal the Human Rights Act 1998, which enshrines it in law, in British law. You repeal that, and essentially everything that's caused by everything that all the sort of Human Rights Act stuff connected to the ECHR is gone overnight. And the same with the Supreme Court. You could pretty much pass a single act of Parliament, a Great Repeal Act, to get rid of most of this stuff in one go. And it wouldn't take much. And so, for example, with the Supreme Court, that would simply return to being the Lords of the House of Lords. And you could deal with it quite quickly. And so a government could, if it put it in the manifesto, get it passed through Parliament with an overall majority within the first 2 to 3 months of its life. And so there's a lot of stuff you could do purely through legislation within, say, the first year of a Parliament that would change the situation radically, effectively reverse things back to the way they were before 97 legally and in a parliamentary sense. And because, as Tharium has mentioned, the British government, due to our system, has a lot of executive power, that would start trickling down. And 5 years of a government that's willing to pass acts like that could turn not only the legislative and political situation around, but also sort of acceptance of that. Because you would be surprised how fast legal firms and journalists would change their tune when they saw which way the wind's blowing. And I think Farage would do it because large swaths of the British population would support it. He would obviously get attacked by the likes of the Guardian and the BBC, but at the same time, he could turn on social media and he could turn to newspapers like the Daily Express or even the Daily Mail and see huge amounts of public support for it. And so I can quite easily imagine a reform government under Farage doing that, as well as doing these sort of deportations of foreign criminals and illegal immigrants. And one thing I will say is that reform is not, to my mind, the permanent party on the right in Britain. This is a stopgap before that appears, probably from one of the factions within reform. So I am going to vote at the next general election for reform, but I don't see reform as a long-term solution. I see it as a sort of as a step on the road to a long-term solution.
I'm hoping.
Aaron, I couldn't have said it better myself, mate. That's pretty much my view. Sorry, Amman, I'll pass it to you.
I was just going to say, I'm hoping good lads like Mitch can take it over.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, listen, I'm only going to have a small interjection here, Tharian. Aaron Hook put it perfectly as far as I'm concerned. Like Aaron and I have done quite a number of streams where we have talked about Britain in the early 20th century. And of course, one of the destructive things that the Liberal Party did to Britain was to just say to the House of Lords, we'll just create so many life peers that they'll do what we want. And also, the Labour Party have been doing that ever since, pretty much, even under Blair. And I think Aaron is entirely correct. What we need to do is to get rid of Blair's so-called Supreme Court, which is a completely alien thing in Britain, and go back to the law lords. And you could do that because a government can create as many life peers as they want to create, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's all I wanted to say. So, Tharian, take it away, mate.
Oh, no, I was just saying. I hope people like Mitch can take it over.
Younger guys, absolutely right. But okay, look, guys. I totally agree with what Aaron said. I don't see reform as the final form of what a right-wing patriotic nationalist government will be in Britain. I think it's a stepping stone. Quite agree with Aaron on that. What do you guys think? Like Tharian, Mitch, Adaman, Hitman? What's your views?
I did like them a lot more. Like during the election, I was so more on board with them. But they've just been souring on me a bit, especially after the Rupert Lowe stuff. And I just don't think Nigel really has it in him, and especially because he's more of a campaigner than a leader, and like nearly everyone who's worked with him ends up hating Nigel, except Zia, it seems. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a doomer though. Like some people, like Elon Musk said, we've got one election to save the nation. I don't agree with that. I think that like my position is, so long as one Saxon still draws breath, it's not over. So we will win.
I think Atman agrees with that, Tharian.
Yeah,
I think Atman agrees with that position. So do I.
We will win one or the other.
There are still millions of us still around.
Yeah. But I'm like with you. I'm not sure Nigel has it in him.
But he could
But-
be a useful stepping stone
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
way.
Smashing,
Well, I was,
smashing
I
the
was
two
talking
parties.
to Alec from the Homeland Party at an event a while back. Not a Homeland event, a different one. And he was like, he didn't see sort of reforms rise as any sort of issue at all. He's like, well, maybe they have a crack at it. Yeah, maybe they succeed, in which case, great. If they don't, they're not as entrenched as like the Tories were. So, like as Aaron said, they're not sort of like a permanent fixture on the right. They're not. They can be overcome as well.
Fair enough. Mitch.
In terms of like people, like my experience with reform, like in terms of like the rank and file, it's like it's a mixed bag. You get some boomerish types who are just like, they're kind of similar to a certain guy we all know with a certain well-sounding name. They can be similar to that kind of, oh well, Sivnat kind of moderate, and they may just be happy if they only deported illegals and foreign criminals, as well as like cut taxes and all the rest of it. Then there's like, let's say, for argument, then you get other guys who, especially like, more closer to my position, where it's just like, I mean, because you got the fact that a lot of these people have never been a member of a political party before, so a lot of those guys will just be open, like almost open with just saying they just want the foreigners out. Like perhaps they're saying in more articulate way than that, just because they don't want to get in trouble, but that's essentially what they want. And it's like I was talking to a bunch of Gen X reform voters yesterday, woodworking course, and it's like, yeah, they'll just say we want the foreigners out. Like I knew a guy from Stone, and Stone, I think they had a migrant hotel or something, and the guy was like, oh, he's never voted before, but he voted before, and that's kind of like what reform's picking up. They're just picking up a lot of people who haven't really bothered with political parties, but they happen to be involved in politics because stuff like the Boris wave has affected them so much, that they happen to be involved in politics. So I don't think, like, I can see what, let's say, you were to have, I don't know, a faction of the likes of our wing of the party. I can imagine, there'd be quite a few takers, because you got factor. It's like when the whole Rupert Lowe situation broke out, everyone would like, most people were kind of like, oh, they just wanted Rupert Lowe back into the fold. They wanted it all to be just a massive nothing burger, and then it just became a matter of, oh well, we regret like the fact that he's we regret like the whole falling. Yeah, a lot of people were kind of like onwards and upwards, but no one near me I knew of was really pleased. They were just like, they didn't really appreciate what happened with Rupert Lowe, and it was just a matter of some people, like some boomerish types, kind of had tried to argue the whole legalistic approach of it, how certain rules are broken or whatever. But like most of us were kind of like, kind of felt it with an ick, but it was a matter of, well, pragmatically, we just thinking, well, look, Rupert. Yeah, it was just a matter of, well, I mean, it's like the view I had for ages, which was, oh yeah, I don't like Zia Yousef. However, I just thought for a long time, well, he's going to be the chairman. I might as well just do the best I can with it. But nowadays, it's like, yeah. So on one hand, I mean, I'm rambling a bit, but I'd say, long story short, there's something of an appetite for something like Rupert Lowe or further beyond that. Like, it's not just, people just want cozy 90s Tory centrism. Like, they want something more than that at this point, because there's so many issues that reaching a confluence all at once, and they just create so many problems that just going back to the 90s won't solve it. A lot of these people never been involved in politics before, but now they're just like, they really are just wanting something more radical than what perhaps even Farage and Tories offer. So I'd say, like, the reform base are to the right of Forge and Tice on stuff like migration and crime, because it's like I don't. It's like, for example, you take your average. I mean, your average punter in reform will just go like, "Oh yeah, we should bring back the death penalty, or we should bring back flogging and stuff." And it's just like that's some of the conversations you can have with like, reform, some like lower, just like I don't know, let's say like reform infantry, I should say, kind of people.
Yeah, I listen. I totally agree with you, Mitch. I'm going to come on a hitman in a minute, but before I do, I'm going to ask Alman, because I know Alman is a working man and he may have to leave us earlier than some people. Alman, did you have anything to add on that stuff?
No. As I said, I mean, I knew nothing on this subject coming into it anyway. So, yeah, I still don't. I mean, at the end of the day, it just, I'm still going to be voting reform at the next election. I don't really see any other. I thought this might be a much more active news cycle, but I mean, it's been quite an active news cycle, but it hasn't been very active in terms of like political intrigue. Not really. It's all been quite dull.
Yeah. We haven't talked about this stuff for weeks because not a lot's been happening, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so I do get where you're coming from there, Alman. And like I say, I agree with you and Tharium and Aaron Hook that, you know, who the hell else are you going to vote for? I mean, you certainly can't vote for the so-called, in air quotes, Conservative Party. And anyone who wanted to vote for Labour again must need their head felt, frankly. But, you know.
Yeah, it's like I remember that once, cause there was a guy in the general election who I won't say his name, but he got doxxed by Hope Not Hate, and the party said, "Oh, we disavow this guy," you know, because it was in the last load of local elections, just before the general election. Now that guy was still going to the Reform office, like the Reform candidate I was campaigning for, still had that guy around, like, and no one really, and you know. Someone mentioned, "Oh yeah, like, oh, there's an article about you on like on the highway website," and it's like, "Oh, they didn't know about it," and like, no one really mentioned it because it was just like, well, the guy was like, I just took him as basically average reform voter. Was like he just, he sees David Lammy being David Lammy and goes, "Oh, he wants to get rid of that and stuff," and whereas nowadays it's like the party's getting a bit tighter. I remember one time during the general election where we had to dissuade a couple of guys from the office because they were Tommy Robinson types, like you had and tattoos and whatnot. It was just kind of like we didn't want to be seen with them because of that crowd where it was just like more trouble than they're worth. We're happy to get their vote, of course, but we don't want Tommy Robinson types.
I've got to say, Mitch, my only issue with Tommy Robinson types, as you say, is I just don't like the Israeli flags on top of the Union Jacks. That's the thing that pisses me off about Tommy Robinson. I mean, and also, when he's being supported by Troons and Sikhs and God knows who else, that's what pisses me off about Tommy Robinson. It's not the tats, it's not the football lads. It's all the other baggage that comes with Tommy Robinson,
I'd reckon most of his supporters don't really go down for that, though. They're not the ones being paid.
No, for sure. You're correct, Farium, I think. Yeah. Sorry, Adman, you were trying to say something?
No, not me.
Hitman, you're even more cynical than I am about reform. So what's your view about this?
Well, it just shows they're a bit of a mess because, as promising as it is that Zia is no longer the chairman, the fact that he's come back leading Doge shows that he still has some influence. And then you've got Faraj's comments and Tice's comments, and it's like, again, every time they do something that makes me want to support them, they do something, or rather they do two things that make me don't want to support them. So at the moment, I don't know, I just feel very disillusioned with them, really.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
I think one thing is, so the election is about 4 years off, and reform's still quite volatile. So there is potential for a lot of change in those 4 years.
I would point out one thing that has been pointed out this week, that woman who did the Prime Minister's question time about the
Sarah Pochin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She almost didn't win that seat because there was a protest vote in favour of Rupert Lowe that came quite close to her not winning. Which I think Nigel Farage should note. He really should.
There was a poll done by some group, and it was who you want the next Prime Minister to be. I think Nigel came out on top with like about 25% or something. But Rupert Lowe was on 6%, which is surprising because he's not well known, outside of in the general public. He's not well known, and he's an independent MP who's like, so he's not going to be Prime Minister like that. So for 6% for just Rupert, that's quite a lot, really.
I was deeply disappointed in Farage saying he'd sooner eat razor blades than have Rupert Lowe back in the party. I thought that was childish. I really
this
did.
is a thing. Like I was saying, I've soured on Nigel. He's got this like catty homosexual side. Is how I see it to him. Without any sort of stuff he doesn't like, anyone he doesn't like, he's just sort of catty homosexual sort of he acts like. Whereas what I want from a leader, I want like to embody the king spirit. You're the one who brings everyone to you. You don't engage in that sort of pathetic sort of nonsense.
It's not an English or a British way of behaving. It isn't. You're quite correct, Sarah.
Because he's done it with people like Godfrey Bloom, Douglas Carswell. He's got this. You're right, very catty homo aspect. That's a great term, Farian.
It is. And it's not an English or a British way of behaving. Englishmen and British guys who disagree, once they've sorted out their disagreement, they shake hands and they get on again. That's the English and British way of doing things. And I know Aaron, who is a big 19th century historian, will agree with me. That's how Englishmen and Britons behave. We don't do this. I'd rather eat razor blades. That's not an English or British way of doing things. It's not.
Yeah.
Even if it's some sort of split that you can't just get over, like it's done. You like, especially as a leader, you should handle it with grace always, not just try and say like nonsense like that. And that's how you bring everyone to you. You act.
The main two arguments I've heard from a pro-Farage side about this whole situation was, A, he's not a team player, and B, that there's certain realistic things that had to be done because apparently some of his staff are bullying others and others. And I go, well, it's just that matter of, well, let's say for argument's sake, it's like, for example, the whole thing about his staff bullying, and I go, I never understood how that related to Rupert Lowe having to be chucked out of a party altogether. Like, I never understood that sort of things because it was a matter of, well, it's like, you want, it's like, for example, let's say, I don't know, you have a branch of Tesco's where the manager, whereas apparently, like, I don't know, one employee being troublesome, you don't sack off the entire staff, or you don't sack off the manager just because of one troublesome employee. I never understood. And as for the whole, he's not a team player, I'm thinking, well,
as if Nigel is.
It's like you have Rupert Lowe. He's, see him often like building bridges with like certain Tory MPs, even though because in one minute he'll say like, the Tory party is so overrun. Like, I mean, he was on with Spectator with Michael Gove, just trying to tear the guy to shreds, just going, well, your party did this, that, and the other, like furlough scheme, and like Rupert Lowe just kind of savage Tory record of stuff like lockdown.
Yeah,
But at the same time, like,
Rupert in there said he'd still vote Reform over Tory, despite all of it.
yeah, I
Yeah,
never,
he did.
I know,
Yeah, he did. He did.
Yeah, yeah. So it's that kind of one of the things where I think like the only complaint there is to have about Rupert is the fact that because he said earlier today that he was going to form up his own party or something, or form up something to challenge reform. And so, well, he's been saying that for ages. It's kind of one of the things where we're just thinking, well, what is to happen? Because I mean, on one hand, you want the vote to be split. On the other hand, it's like, well, as was said earlier, you do look at someone like Rupert Lowe. If you give him a question like, will you support every single illegal immigrant as a foreign criminal, he'll just answer it straight in one sentence. Whereas someone like Richard Tice will just take up 5 sentences on waffle. And it's kind of like one of the things where, like, Rupert Lowe does have organic appeal among people who've actually heard of him. So like, you got what's his name, Sammy Woodhouse, after singing his praises about the grooming and stuff and whatnot, and he said, well, that's kind of what, like, that's like, I don't know. I mean, I can imagine. I just go for case example. Let's say, I don't know, I say Reform voters that I've known near me. If they were to know more than Rupert Lowe, I mean, these are just average punters off the street. They'll just be like, well, yeah, we kind of like this guy because he's straight talking. You know where you stand with him. I mean, they are. And you got back to the average punter.
He's also Mitch. He's also got a Martini Henry rifle. When we saw the police seizing his military his firearms collection, he has a Martini Henry, and as far as I'm concerned, any British guy with a Martini Henry is a good guy. So yeah.
I was just. It's also worth noting that you have the average punter out there. They think of Nigel Farage as essentially being like a guy who wants to deport all the Blairians. I think Nigel Farage is a lot more radical than it actually is in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
I mean, could I just say, Henry Long, Mitch sounds like a Dalek that has fallen down a well. Do you know what? Mitch's microphone is not at its best this evening, but Mitch does this. He doesn't get paid for it. You know, and I can understand him perfectly well. I'm sorry that Mitch's microphone is not as good as you would like it, but you know what? No one's paying him. So
not to reintroduce an old meme, but donate to Microphones for Racists today. Only 1488.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Well done. Thank you, Alma. I can hear Mitch perfectly well. If you want him to have a better microphone, then by all means send him a better microphone. You know, whatever.
Like Mitch was saying, I do think I agree with that Nigel benefits a lot from all the years of all the papers calling him, you know, evil, racist, Nazi man. So a lot of people on the right sort of think he's far more based than he actually is. And he's currently benefiting from that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, this is kind of the lefties did this a lot, didn't they? With sort of like they sort of fulfill their own prophecies, where they sort of create an enemy. They make them appear way more base than they intend to, and then cry when everyone flocks to them.
Trump kind of had this because he got the some of the American white nationalists on board from all, because it was all the talk of, oh, he's an evil racist, and then he gets into power and they realize, wait, he's not building a white ethno state. What the hell? I'm going Democrats instead.
Yeah, you get a lot of that, certainly. You do. All right, guys. Final thoughts from people before I ask people to do shills and what have you. If you have final thoughts on what we've been talking about this evening or more general stuff, do it now, please, gents.
No, nothing from me.
Well, he may not be too popular. I know Iron Duke's not a fan, but I stream with Harry and Gladive on the Worcester Club. I know
God.
if you don't like carrying, I am at least there bullying him throughout the whole thing. So there's that. And
Based.
on Tuesday, I believe we're going over Dominic Cummings' latest blog post, where he's sort of looking into he's sort of talking about the possibility of how our intelligence services are scared of rising ethnic and gang violence from all sides.
I'm sure they are, because
and they don't have any answers to it, and our politicians are too stupid to sort of do anything about it.
I'm sure that's
we
true.
probably should have talked about that blog actually, because that was quite interesting.
Hang on, Adam. Well, we tell us about this, because I hadn't quite got on to shilling yet, but which I do right at the end of the stream, by the way. Adam, go tell us about this blog.
Well,
You mean the blog from Cummings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you talk about that, man.
Oh, I mean, it probably needs a whole stream to its own thing, but as Therium and the others will do. But he basically just kind of reiterates, to a large extent, a lot of the positions that a lot of people on the right have kind of suspected for a long time. He goes into how there is I think he says specifically a small but growing sort of group within Whitehall that are just sort of incapable of understanding how they're going to fix sort of violence on the streets going forward.
I think the small but growing group he's talking about is the Whitehall who are slowly realizing, oh, we're sitting on a powder keg.
Yeah.
And we don't really have any answers to it.
And it's within a week of him, within 3 days of him posting that, you then had this thing with Prevent that, I mean, we've talked about Prevent on this stream a lot, but coming out and saying that, cultural nationalism, which is kind of the most mundane of strains of nationalism as it is.
It's terrorism. It's right-wing terrorism.
Cultural nationalism is sort of what we had been told we're supposed to want. Everyone can come here and be British. That's because our culture is so amazing. This is what we had been told we're supposed to want, and now even that is terrorism.
Yeah, I think actually Dominic Cummings is going to be in a conversation with Steve Edgington that you can buy tickets for and attend in Oxford. I believe it's this coming Wednesday. For anyone that's interested, if there's still tickets available,
I'd like to ask this, right? Because I'd like Cummings to join Reform. Does anyone else on the panel think that would be good?
He's been talking with Reform a bit. I know him and Nigel have they haven't got along in the past. He's been talking with them in the past, though more recently. And in this blog post, he's clearly not that impressed by them, because I have disagreements with Cummings because he's a bit of a tech bro, but he is very in touch with everything going on in Whitehall. He knows all of that a lot more than any of us know. And his view on Reform is that it is currently still just nothing, but it has no sort of real campaign machine, and it is basically still just Nigel with an iPhone. So he doesn't seem too impressed with whatever work has gone on with them so far.
Yeah, which, I mean, they kind of need someone like Cummings on board, really. Because I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you had this with UKIP back in the day when it was Farage. Then is that they always made out that it was the media was always making out like it was this slick sort of elitist the campaigning machine, but actually, if you went to UKIP headquarters, they had 4 computers, and the one closest to the fire exit was called the internet computer, and they got by because they happened to sort of coalesce around something that was very much in tune with the public pulse, and that sort of jettisoned them to great success, and they're essentially just doing that again with Reform and Farage now. But it's nowhere near as slick of an operation as a lot of people like to think.
Yeah, that was one thing. think mentioned a while back was you had apparently Forge had a personal conversation with Dominic Cummings, and that was when you had Forge talking about his deportations plan. Like was it like a month ago or 2 months ago or something like that? And then you have apparently I think it was I know Rupert Lowe had conversations with Liz Truss back when he was still with Reform, and you also had stuff and you also had stuff like that. But then Reform with Reform, it's like some people complain about this where they go, there's not like some of the policies which were crap like that. The climate stuff that Richard Twice always brings in, like banning batteries and pylons
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
That's just even like lower, even like people on the low ends who don't really think of the best stuff. They're just like, what's wrong with pylons? Like this is just going to stroke at best just weird to the average
Yeah.
punter. And it's like the other thing is that I'd say to people like I say in a pragmatic way. I wouldn't say no to like advising people join your local reform group because I mean it's like even if you don't see local reform, just because I'm thinking because like Lau Kai Harry on Twitter, I think he probably said best. Well, it's a matter of even if like let's say for argument's sake something forms up. Like let's say Rupert Lowe was to form his own party and we all wanted to jettison to that. I think like the best thing you can do is like build bridges with people on the lower ranks of reform. So that because it's like, this is one thing that's often said about reform poaching some Tories. You know, oh well, you have to poach off pre-existing parties in order to show up your own. Well, if Rupert Lowe was to create his own party, you imagine there'd be quite a few people within reform who'd be receptive to that. For argument's sake.
Good point, Mitch. I think that's a very good point, and I would agree. Adaman, Hitman, Aaron Hook, anything to say on this before we move on to Shilling?
No, nothing from me.
Nothing really.
Hitman?
I've had my piece.
All right, guys. Okay, I will do super chats then, because we do actually have one. First of all, thank you to Gieran, who sent us $5 very early in the stream and just said hello. And we also got $3 from Sheev Palpacringe. And he says, support your local Anglo-Celtic people here. Thank you very much for that, Sheev Palpacringe. It's most appreciated. As I said, I'm spending money to keep this channel going now. And so any donations we get via Entropy go on that, basically. So it just goes straight back into the stream. If I wanted to make money on YouTube, this is not what I would be doing. So, you know, I spend more than we get, but I'm happy for any donation that we get. All right, guys. Although he's already partially done it, I'm going to give Farium a second bite of the cherry. Anything you want to plug, sir?
No, just that really. I don't.
Right.
I don't.
So your streams, and is that on Harrian's channel?
This is the Worcester Club.
Oh, okay. Worcester Club's okay. I used to be a member of the Worcester Club. I left merely because I got in too many rows about Rupert Lowe and reform. But yeah, and I used to be an enormous fan of Jack's Peloponnesian War streams. And I always thought they were most amusing because they were on Harrian's channel, and every time Harrian opened his mouth, he just sounded like an idiot. But you know, and Jack's actually quite a reasonable historian who I keep trying to get on this stream. He hasn't quite done it yet, but I hope he will. Certainly on one of our. I hope he will join us at least on one of our Wednesday history streams, because we do a history stream every week now. But yeah, do go and check out Therium's stream that he was talking about. Mitch, anything you would like to plug, sir, including your ex Twitter and what have you?
So in terms of, I mean, I'm a lot sportsman. a lot of my tweets are a lot sparser, but then again, I don't know, it's picked up the past couple of days. I went through all this drama and so on, and it's like I don't know, because I mean, it kind of had a divergence of views. Like 1 minute, I would say, oh well, I didn't think Zia Yousef was going to be opposed to banning the burqa, but I'm hearing the next minute he actually was, and it's like kind of so. I'll probably tweet a lot. I'll probably be a lot more active on Twitter, in short order.
And that's Anglo Gropnik, isn't it, Mitch?
Yeah, I'll put it in chat because we got that on the dash.
Well, I retweet all these gents occasionally on my Twitter as well. So yeah, Hitman, what would you like to plug? I know you just had a stream like today or yesterday, didn't you?
Yes, I streamed earlier with the next episode of my series on modern Iran. I had my good friend Hunger the Dye Merchant to join me. We were talking about the collapse of the Safavid Empire and the 18th century clusterfuck that was Iran. So if you're interested, then please give that a watch. I also did a stream earlier this week with Aaron Hook, who were talking about the transformation of British politics from 1900 to 1924 with the decline of the Liberal Party and the rise of Labour. So if you're interested, please give that a watch.
You were also on with the excellent Semiagog, weren't you, about a week ago, Hitman?
Yes, I was. We were talking about the British pulp author Michael Moorcock and his creations such as Elric and Coram and etc. etc. So if you're interested, please give that a watch as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I recommend Hitman's channel. It's got some. It's some of it's a bit esoteric, I guess, but it's good. And also Hitman is a very good historian, particularly when it comes to stuff around the Middle East. So yeah, I recommend that stuff. Aaron Hook, anything you'd like to plug, sir?
Well, there's my channel, which is on YouTube, Aaron James Hook, and I cover books and films. And I did a live stream earlier tonight about Frank Herbert's Dune, and I will be doing another one possibly next Saturday, about the sort of Dune series by Frank Herbert, as I'm reading Dune Messiah at the moment.
Cool. Adaman, anything you'd like to plug, sir?
No, nothing from me at all.
All right, you listen, mate. You're always very, very welcome on this channel. But you should probably. You used to make some quite good short videos and stuff. Maybe you should do that. But although, to be fair, you're probably too busy at work, I guess.
Yeah, I do keep wanting to, but yeah, it's I'm not naturally good at putting those edits together, so it's kind of as and when the sort of spark gets to me, and then it's having to find the time to make it at that moment.
Fair enough. And look, mate, I'm semi-retired, so like I've got heaps of time, and if you're doing long shifts and you're working, and I know you work in logistics and that sort of stuff, so I can understand it. I would just say a couple of things. We have a couple of upcoming history streams, one of which is going to be about Aden in the end of the 1960s. So we're going to be talking about what went on there, and that is mainly going to be Hitman stream, to be honest with you. And we're also going to do another one a bit later about Britain and Oman in the 1960s and the 1970s, which is quite interesting. I mostly know about the British Army stuff related to those things, whereas Hitman, because of his area of interest, knows much more about the Arab stuff that was going on around there as well. So I suggest they will be good streams. But I have made a decision today, and our Wednesday stream is going to be the Battle of Waterloo. And that's partly because of someone's suggestion earlier in the chat. And I thought, hell yeah, we should do that. And it was Darren Buckley who said, do Waterloo. So on Wednesday, history stream on Wednesday is going to be the Battle of Waterloo, where the Duke of Wellington and his British army, which was not bad, but was tiny, but had loads of Dutch and German allies who varied very much in quality, were able to hold off Napoleon and the best troops of France until the Prussians came up on his flank and won. Although I have to say, I think Wellington would have won on his own, but he wouldn't have been able to pursue the French, which is what the Prussians did. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday. And I very much hope.
I was just going to say, because the anniversary is on the 18th, and I believe the 18th is a week on Wednesday. So I thought you were doing it. I thought we would.
Well, I suppose we could do that. Yeah, all right, we could do that. I guess. Let me just check my calendar.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
You got to remember something, Mitch. I'm a day ahead of you guys. All right, yeah, you're right. So we won't do it this week. We'll do it next week. So that means, what are we going to do on Wednesday? Why don't we do this live? I've with at least 3 of our historical guys are in this stream. So what do you want to do on Wednesday, guys? Come up with a good suggestion, and we'll say we'll do it now, because I'm trying to get these 2 weeks ahead. Hitman, Aaron Hook, Ammon, Tharium, Mitch, give us a suggestion of what to do on Wednesday for our history stream.
I mean, I can't suggest because I probably won't be able to make it. So I wouldn't want.
No, I know you're working.
I
know you're working.
Partake in.
I know you're working, mate. I realise that. But on the other hand, if you want to make a suggestion, you're most welcome to. You've been involved in this channel as long as I have, which is like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. It's a long fucking time. Anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, Waterloo's always a good choice.
But we'll do Waterloo on the 18th, as Mitch said.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to do Waterloo a week before. We'll do it on the 18th because that's Waterloo Day.
I can't say much about it. I don't know much about it, but I do know one of my cousins. He was one of the military advisors in Oman during the 60s.
Well, you're most welcome to join that stream, and I can tell you now, when I do that stream, Hitman's going to be one of the main guys doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Britain actually got rid of the guy in charge in Oman in the 60s. It was one of the last times the British government did a coup.
He got I remember he got it was during the after the Second World War. Before that, I think he was one of the military advisors, and he got lots of very expensive jewels and stuff as part of that.
Oh yeah, look, even recently, like the Omani army has quite a lot of ex-British officers and what have you involved in it. So, and in the 70s, you had the SAS fighting a battle at Mirbat, which was quite like Royal Shrift, like they were hugely outnumbered. There was also SAS guys who had their heads chopped off by the guerrillas, the communist guerrillas in the hills. But like I said, we'll do a stream on that. Although Hitman has asked me to give him some time to do some research on that one. But what I'm asking guys to come up with now is, what do you want to do on Wednesday, gents?
In terms of June 11th, the only event that coming up for me is apparently June 11th, 1770. Captain Cook ran aground on the Great Barrier Reef. So,
well, we could indeed do Captain Cook, or we could do the British settlement of Australia. We could do either of those. I'm sure we could. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm reading a book about Lewis and Clark exploring. So I can do it. I can do Captain Cook because I can imagine I'll be finishing off that Lewis and Clark book tomorrow for argument's sake. So I can imagine I'll be in the mood for dealing
Cool.
with more exploration stuff if you want to do. If anyone else is willing to do Captain Cook exploring in the Pacific and so on.
Well, I mean, we will certainly do that at some stage, even if we don't do it on Wednesday. But yeah, Aaron Hitman, any ideas what you would like to do on Wednesday?
We could do about sort of Soviet espionage in Britain.
That could be interesting. I'm not sure we can do 2 hours on it, but I suppose we could, yeah.
Jake, if you had me on the guest, I could certainly do 2 hours on it.
Yeah, possible. Hitman, any ideas?
Well, if you wanted to rope in my expertise, I don't know, maybe we could talk about the Suez Canal or something.
Yeah, you know what? That might be interesting because my father did his military service in the Suez Canal in the very early 1950s. So why don't we do Britain and the Suez Canal, like from the time it was taken over in 1882 until 1956? That might be quite interesting, I think. Because we can also bring out the nonsense of Britain withdrawing from the place and then trying to retake it over again only a couple of years later.
Yeah, the treaty we signed before was completely nonsensical and shambolic.
Yeah. All right. We'll do Britain and the Suez Canal on Wednesday. I think that might be quite reasonable. Darren Buckley will do Waterloo the week after on the 18th of June, which is when you should do Waterloo. So hopefully that will make everybody happy. I hope, anyway. Just checking something. Okay, cool. All right, guys. As always, I'm going to try and play us out of a tune. Now, I don't know what happened here. My friend Mick, who is Patriotic Archive, put up the Middlesex Regiment's song, the Jolly Die Hards, but then he took it down again. So I can't use that because that was what I was going to use because that's my family regiment. But instead, I'm going to use this one. Let's see if I can get it to play. It's always a magical mystery to her. Here we go. Let's see if it plays.
It's all a shepherd's daughter, and dear keeping sheep all on the time. So when our dear little babe is born, I might call him the same with me right, for lol diddle all day. Sometimes they call me Jackie, said sometimes they call me John. But when I am at the King's High Court, they call me Knight William with me right, for lol diddle all day. He's put his foot all in the stirrup and away he then did ride. She she's tied a handkerchief around her waist and followed at the horse's side with me ride. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. She's run till she come to the river brink. She's fell on her belly and swam. And when she came to the other side, she took to her heels and she ran with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. She's run till she come to the King's High Court. She's knocked and she's ringed. There's none so ready as the King himself to let this fair maid in with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Good morn to you, fair maid, he said. Good morn, kind sir, says she. Have you a night all in your court? Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Well, have he robbed you of your gold or any of your store? Or have he robbed you of your gold ring you wear on your little finger with me right? Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Well, he ain't robbed me of me gold or any of me store, but he's robbed me of me maidenhead, which grieves my heart full sore with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Well, if he be a married man, then hanged he shall be. But if he be a single man, then his body I will give to thee with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. The King has called all his men by one, by two, by three. Knight William used to be the foremost man, but now all behind comes he with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Oh, cursed be the very hour that I got drunk by wine, for to have a shepherd's daughter dear, to be a true lover of mine with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. Well, if you think me a shepherd's daughter, if you make me lady of 1,000 men, I'll make you lord of 10 with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day. So then these two to church they went, and them small things was done. She appeared like some duke's daughter, and him like a squire's son with me right. Fa-lal-lal, diddle-lal day.
And that was a traditional English folk ballad, The Knight and the Shepherd's Daughter. And as people have pointed out in the chat, it's got quite a lot of double entendres and what have you in it, but they're pretty typical of English folk songs. Down to earth people the English used to be, I have to say.
Oh yeah, there's an idea that like the medieval times, people were prudes and stuff. Couldn't be further from the truth.
No,
Then when you have the
absolutely
Reformation,
not.
that people started being prudish.
Yeah.
It's worth noting
Yeah,
also what.
probably true.
Yeah, so apparently, like one sort of like Middle English to like so we can see how the language changed in that time. From like, I think it's like the 13th century, or during, like, I think it was Edward Longshanks' time, where the pamphlet is literally called "Ladies, Guard Your CUNT," like because
Yep.
back in most. So yeah, it was kind of like there was no taboo about talking about that kind of stuff between like women, like women's groups, or young blokes who, you can imagine. I mean, perhaps we don't know of them, but you can imagine, but probably I don't know, cheeky lad songs during the 100 Years' War about French birds or whatever. Because I've got
For sure. Yeah, look, I know Mitch is particularly interested in the development of the English language and what have you. So yeah, absolutely. But but it used to be pretty down to earth in England. And although, of course, you've got to be careful about looking at the past through rose-colored spectacles, merry old England was actually a thing to some degree. The English were known for liking drinking and dancing and having fun. And as Tharium said, it was the Reformation to some degree that, I guess. It was only in the 1500s, really, that there were problems with this stuff. And England and Britain was not all that unhappy to see the Puritans pissing off to New England.
Yeah.
To some degree. The majority of English people didn't really like Oliver Cromwell's banning of Christmas celebrations and dancing and all the stuff that Englishmen and women had always done,
And considering they dug up his body to defile the corpse, I mean, that kind of shows you what they thought of banning Christmas.
Yes, they weren't too happy. But he used to ban fairs.
Yeah.
And dancing and singing and, English society, the continental people who visited England prior to Cromwell always pointed out about English and British people that, generally speaking, they were nice, but they were also very merry. They liked to have a drink. They liked to have a dance, and they'd have a riot anytime they wanted one. It's like that. That was always what England and Britain was known for.
Yeah, it's like I think it was like 1487. There was like a papal envoy who he visited England. And apparently, he said in the daytime we were as good as angels, but as soon as we started drinking in nighttime, we became like devils, according to them. And the other thing was, apparently, because another thing was apparently back in the time of 100 Years' War, it was often said that English people would often say if they came across an attractive young person, whether it be attractive young woman especially, they used to insist, okay, that young woman must be English.
Yeah.
For sure. But I'm quite proud of that British tradition. I think it's a good one.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I'm just going to show one book. There's a book by Peter Ackroyd called The History of England Foundation. There's like a 2-page chapter in that where it's literally titled "What Others Think of Us," and it's usually like some of the best words you'll hear to describe debate the English. Because he says we love to quarrel, and we love to fight each other. We love to get drunk, and we are excessively proud of ourselves and stuff. It's just kind of like the best words you hear about English back in the Middle Ages.
Oh yeah, look, the term squashbuckler, which you will have heard from Hollywood movies in the 30s and 40s, originally a squashbuckler was an Englishman who walked around with a sword and a buckler. And a buckler was a little shield that you could wear on your belt. An Englishman would fight with those things for any reason, like during Shakespeare's era, that sort of time,
Yeah, and it's like you've got apparently one common French nickname for us back in the 100 Years' War was "les goddams," because apparently the most common word that the French heard every time they came across Englishmen in battle was "goddamn," because we were just not swearing.
Yep. Even Napoleon and the Napoleonic French used to sometimes call the British troops the goddams because we used to swear so much. Poor little French buggers. But anyway, true, guys. Thank you very, very much to my guests this evening, Adaman, Mitch, Hitman, Aaron Hook, and Tharium. And we'll see you on Wednesday for our history stream, which is going to be about Britain and the Suez Canal. In the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down. Go well, people.
See you around.